Hey everyone, welcome. Let's talk about one of the most important groups in English literature that you absolutely need to know for your UGC NET exam, the University Wits. Hold that thought. Have you ever wondered who really paved the way for great playwrights like Shakespeare? Well, it was this brilliant bunch. They were a group of late 16th century English playwrights and writers who shared a common trait. They were all educated at either Oxford or Cambridge universities. And here's something you probably didn't expect. They weren't writing for the church. Instead, they became famous as secular writers, meaning they wrote about worldly human themes. Let's decode who was in this group. From Cambridge, we have Christopher Marlowe, Robert Greene, and Thomas Nashe. And from Oxford, there was John Lyly, Thomas Lodge, and George Peele. Can you recall who is sometimes included even though they didn't go to one of those universities? That's right, it's Thomas Kidd. He's often mentioned with the Wits, and that's an important detail to remember. Now, let's get into the heart of their work. This is where it gets crucial for your exam. Pause here and note this down, because this next part has been asked in the exam. The heroic qualities in their plays were all about grand, splendid descriptions, long, powerful speeches, and the handling of dramatic, violent incidents and intense emotions. See, this isn't just theory, it's exactly what you'll be tested on. You'll love this part as we break down the specific characteristics of their plays. This is a classic UGC trap, so let's be careful and pay attention. Their plays often had heroic themes featuring significant historical figures, and this was asked in exam. They loved using grand and elaborate descriptions to make their stories come alive. And another key point which has also been asked in the exam is that they favored long, eloquent speeches in their dialogues. In fact, all these points were asked in exam. Their masterful handling of intense emotions and conflicts is another point that has been featured in the exam, so highlight that. And here's the golden trick. The language they used was predominantly blank verse, which gave them so much flexibility in their writing. And guess what? This has been also asked in exam. Their plays were usually tragic and earnest, and while they did include some comedy, it was minimal and often quite crude. Their ambition with style sometimes led to something called bombast in their weaker works, which just means the language was overly grand and exaggerated. But when they got it right, like Christopher Marlowe did, their style was truly impressive. And finally, this is a super important point for your exam, so let's be sure to remember it. This group of writers truly pioneered professional secular writing in Elizabethan England, and this feature was also asked in exam. They took writing from a hobby or a religious pursuit and made it a profession, a job which changed the game for everyone who came after them. First up, let's talk about the multi-talented Thomas Lodge. Did you know he had a total career change? Lodge actually started out studying law, but he abandoned his legal career for a life of writing and acting. He was a truly prolific writer, especially of pamphlets, and he loved to imitate Lyly's fancy, high-flown, euphuistic style. Hold that thought, because he's also known to have possibly collaborated with Shakespeare on Henry VI. His only solo play to survive is called The Wonders of Civil War. A fun fact for you is that he co-wrote A Looking Glass for London and England with Robert Greene. Here's something you probably didn't expect. Lodge was also a medical practitioner. His versatility was really something. His work, A Fig for Momus, published in 1595, made him one of the earliest English satirists. He also published the works Phyllis and the Complainte of Elsierd in 1593. Now, let's move on to another key figure who you'll definitely see in your exam. George Peele. Born in London and educated at Oxford, Peele tried to make a living as a professional author. This was still a new and challenging idea back then, and he ended up as what was known as a literary hack, a freelancer just trying to make ends meet. He was a great experimenter with different forms and styles of poetry. Many anonymous plays from the Elizabethan era have been attributed to him, so it can be tricky to know what's truly his. Pause here and note this down, because this is a key point for your exam. His earliest important work is the Arraignment of Paris, which he wrote around 1581 to 1584. This was such a significant work that it was performed right in front of Queen Elizabeth herself. He's also known for his disputed collaboration with Shakespeare on Titus Andronicus. You love this part, because the list of Peele's works has actually been asked in the exam. So, let's go over them together. In 1581, he gave us the Arraignment of Paris, a kind of romantic comedy. Then came Edward I in 1593, a rambling chronicle play. He also wrote The Battle of Alcazar in 1594. My personal favorite is The Old Wives' Tale from 1595, a clever satire on the popular dramas of the day. Finally, we have David and Bathsheba and The Love of King David and Fair Bathsheba, both published in 1599. Let's dive into the fascinating and notoriously chaotic life of another university wit, Robert Greene. He was a writer who truly lived a prolific but also reckless life. Here's a fact you'll never forget. He was born in Norwich, went to both Cambridge and Oxford, and by his own account lived a wild life in London. His life came to an end after an overindulgence of pickled herring at an alehouse. This is just a glimpse into the intense and sometimes erratic energy that defined his writing. He wrote more than 35 prose works between 1580 and 1592, which are known for their malicious wit and powerful imagination. When we look at his plays, we find 4 major works written between 1586 and 1592. Pause here and note this down, because this next point is a classic UGC NET exam question. His play, Alphonsus, King of Aragon from 1587, was a direct imitation of Christopher Marlowe's famous Tamburlaine, and it was recently asked in exam. His best play, however, is considered to be Friar Bacon and Friar Bungay from 1589, which really gives us a great look into Elizabethan life. Greene initially tried to attract public attention by slavishly following the popular literary trends of the day. His very first model was John Lyly's fancy style from Euphues. This was also asked in exam. And here's a point that you'll see in almost every exam. His pastoral prose work, Pandosto, from 1588, was the direct source for one of Shakespeare's most famous plays, The Winter's Tale. This adaptation was asked in exam. This is a must-know point. And finally, we have to talk about the most famous controversy. This is a super important point for your exam, so let's be sure to remember it. Greene is famous for writing the very first printed reference to William Shakespeare. In his work, Groat's Worth of Wit, in 1592, he attacked Shakespeare by calling him an upstart crow that was beautified with our feathers. This particular commentary was asked in exam. Greene was thought to be criticizing Shakespeare, who was an actor, for presuming that he could write, as well as the University Wits. It's a truly fascinating moment in literary history. Let's talk about the last of our key University Wits, Thomas Nashe. He was born in Lowestoft and was educated at Cambridge, just like some of the others we've discussed. Let's decode his unique personality. Nashe was what we would call a born journalist. He moved to London in 1586 to start his literary career, but unlike many of his peers, he primarily focused on writing pamphlets. He was a master of political and personal debates, and he wasn't afraid to be harsh or truculent, as it's often described. His fiery words even landed him in jail in 1600. You'll love this part because he also had a connection to the great Christopher Marlowe, even completing his play Dido. But the only play of his that survives is the delightful Summer's Last Will and Testament from 1592. This is a must-know point for your exam, so be sure to commit that title to memory. His most significant prose work is something you absolutely need to know, Jack Wilton, or The Unfortunate Traveller from 1594. The name of the work and also the character named Jack Wilton had been featured in the exam. This prose tale is incredibly important because it's considered a key milestone in the development of the English novel. Hold that thought, because understanding its significance is just as important as knowing the name itself. It's a foundational work. Let's talk about John Lyly. He was educated at Magdalen College, Oxford, and then made his way to London around 1576 to kick off his literary career. Hold that thought, because he's famous for something you absolutely need to know, a unique literary style called euphuism. This style is named after the main character of his two most famous prose romances. Pause here and note this down, because this next point is a must-know for your exam. His first prose romance, Euphues, The Anatomy of Wit from 1578, has been asked in the exam. He followed it up with a sequel, Euphues and His England, in 1580. You'll love this part as we go through some of his most important plays. Lyly was a prolific writer, and his plays are just as famous as his prose. His plays appear in different orders, so let's pay attention to the dates. You should know his plays Endymion from 1591, Campaspe from 1584, and Sappho and Phao from 1584. Here's something you probably didn't expect. The plays Galatea from 1592 and The Woman in the Moon from 1595 to 1597 have also been asked in the exam. Let's decode the style itself. The name Euphus is derived from a Greek word that means graceful or witty. This is a classic UGC trap, so let's be careful. While the style is his own, Lyly didn't come up with the name out of thin air. He actually adopted the name from Roger Ascham's The Shoaly Master, which described an ideal student, and has been asked in exam. The style of euphuism is known for its parallel arrangements and long winding sentences called periphrases, again asked in exam. This creates a very specific mannered effect that was widely imitated in his day.